Welcome to another episode of Inside Treasures by Phoebus. On the last episode, we talked about the art of forgiveness. It was about changing how we feel about someone, about forgiving and letting go of negative emotions. In summary, it was about feeling self-love, and from that point of self-love, to let go of negative emotions that are holding us back and allowing ourselves to move forward with ourselves and with others. If you missed the episode, feel free to go back and listen to the art of forgiveness. In this episode, we're going to talk about how our feelings and emotions and thinking become part of our own internal reality. Anything that comes within our awareness is our personal subjective experience. But yet again, it becomes our world of reality. Our internal experience cannot be negated by anyone. We might be frantic or we might be pragmatic and realistic. But what we experience is what we experience. Whether that is love or fear, it doesn't really matter. It's 100% real to us. The world we experience, however real it is to us, is not always connected with the real world. I remember years ago when we had been with my wife on a trip to Guernsey. And somehow we found ourselves to go on a boat ride. So it was a beautiful day, the sun was shining. And we went on the boat ride. The sea was beautiful. It was fairly warm, so it was very pleasant to be out in the sea. And then we returned back to the port. And I noticed someone. That got off the boat, and she was on crutches. And I started to think. Somehow, she intrigued my attention. What was it? Why did she have crutches? I had a look, and I saw that she had been amputated. She was missing a leg. So she was using her crutches to walk. I immediately felt an urge to walk a little bit faster and see. How did she feel? How does it look? So I started walking a little bit faster. My wife is looking at me thinking, where are you going? And I'm walking a little bit past her and her family. And then I turn around to pretend to look at my wife, but actually I'm looking at her facial expressions. Is she happy? I wanted to know if she was happy, because in my internal experience, she was missing a leg, and that could be something that I would feel it could make me feel sad. But I was very surprised that she was happy. Why wouldn't she be happy? She had just been on a boat ride with the sun shining and the people she loved. Her internal experience was completely different from what I had expected. But of course, what did I expect? A very sad person who had just been on a boat ride with the people she loved? And this is to show about our internal experience, our own personal internal experience, the way we experience the world. And to explain that, I would like to share with you a model. You can access this model from our website. But because we have no visual right now, I'm going to try to explain this with words. And the model works in a sense of what we have as concentric circles. Now, what is concentric circles? Well, if you were to think about a target, a shooting practicing target, you would see that there is a circle within a circle within a circle. So that's what concentric circles is. So on the outside layers, we have the world around us. Trees, the lakes, the bushes, the rocks, the mountains, the hills. What is? What was there before we were here? And what is here since we've been here? So the houses, the buildings, and everything that is out there, everything that composes our world. The sky, the earth, the moon, all those things that exist, whether we exist or not. As we move in closer to that, we'll see that we find ourselves. And around us, there are other people who experience themselves. So we see that we are, and the people around us. There's you, there's me, there's your friend, there's your wife, there's your husband, there's other people who experience the world in a similar way. And now let's get closer to the model. So we explain the outside world. What is out there? So we have the outside, and then we have something we can call the inside. How we experience the world. What is our internal experience? In between the two worlds, we have a lens, a filter. This is how we see the world and how things get filtered as the world is communicating to us. Now, how do we perceive the external world? We all know that. We've learned it when we were young, through our 5 senses. We taste, we smell, we have sight, we have touch, we have hearing. And that's how the input comes into us. Things are coming and traveling away, whether we're listening or hearing or tasting. That's how we perceive the world outside of us. That's how we come in contact with the world. If I want to feel something, I go and touch it and understand what it is. I can see a car coming, so I understand internally that I need to be careful through my experience. So this is the way that our external senses are communicated into our internal world. Next, we have sort of our internal senses. We make pictures in our mind, and this is what we can see. Some of us more aware of them. Some pictures are brighter and stronger than others. But most of the time, we're creating pictures within our mind. Then we have our internal dialogue. This is a listening thing. We can sometimes listen to our favorite music that we heard over and over and over again, and it just keeps coming back and playing within our mind, and we're wondering, why is this coming back? Why is this coming back? Or we can speak in a positive tone towards ourselves. Or sometimes we can be really, really harsh and talk ourselves down. So the main two are hearing and seeing. But it's also how we feel, which is more connected to touch. How do I feel? What sensations do I have within my body? When I'm happy, I have different sensations than when I'm being sad or depressed. Now that I explained the senses, I'm going to move into a different layer within our inside world. And that is the world of the thoughts and emotions. And those are usually made, in our experience, through the senses, the internal senses that I explained, how we feel and how we think. Usually we think in pictures, in sounds, and how we feel more on our emotions. This is another way to understand about emotions and thoughts and what it is that they are doing in our experience of our internal world. We have the internal setting now. Outside we had trees, we had lakes. Now inside we have emotions, we have thoughts. And the way we communicate with our emotions and our thoughts, the way we communicate with the world, is through the senses, internal or external. And then I'm going to put a little parenthesis here that we also have our subconscious mind within ourselves, which is where all our memories are stored, our beliefs, our values. And we're going to push that to the side, just something to have in the back of our minds. And then in the very center, the bullseye, we have the observer. The observer is in some literature, it's been called, like for Freud, he's called it the superego. You might hear it as the inner self, as your core self, as your higher self. All sorts of different names, but it's who we are in our core when everything is happening. The more close we are to the observer, the more we are observing what is, the more connected we are with ourselves. When we get lost into emotions, into thoughts, into our senses, a lot of times we lose sight of who we are. So that's a generic model of how we experience the world. We have the outside world, we have our inner world with our emotions, our thoughts, our desires. We have ourselves, our observer. We also have a lens that acts as a filter between what comes in and what comes out, and that is deeply connected with our beliefs and our values, how we see ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, our self-worth. I'm sure if you were to have the diagram next to you, it's going to make your life a lot easier to actually understand the model, but I did my best to actually explain it as simple as possible. Now, how does this relate to changing your reality? It just illustrates how we have a subjective reality that is very real to the one who is experiencing it. But at times, it gets distorted. Now, whether we apply this model on positive experiences or negative experiences, it doesn't really matter, because the model works in the same way. But I want you to understand about what we like to label as negative emotions. For me, it just makes it easier to address them. When we experience negative emotions, we disconnect from who we are. We disconnect from joy, we disconnect from love. And we drive a wedge between our relationships, whether that is the relationship with ourselves or with the relationships with others. We stew in an emotion over and over and over for time and time on end. So you see, that's our internal world, that sphere of perception of how we experience ourselves and the world. And that goes from being healthy into toxic. And that's what gets to me. There's certain emotions that create an interference, that disconnect us from the observer, from who we are. There's irritation, aggravation, annoyance, feeling anxious and worried about something, feeling resentment towards something or someone, envy, jealousy. Those can disconnect us from other people. They drive a wedge into our relationships. And the reason is because of our internal experience, and our lens gets distorted, and then we can't really communicate fully and flow with the world. Some other emotions I may also go through is, for example, depression. We get self-absorbed into a dull, internal, clouded reality. And that is our world. And if I were to come and tell you, hey, cheer up, the world is a beautiful place, because of your lens and your filter and how you feel, it's going to be very hard to come in and grow inside you. We get self-absorbed in our own internal reality. Another example is feeling shame, fear, sadness, despair, grief, complaining, blaming. These again, they create an interference about who we are, our core, about the world as it is, about other people, of who they are and how they are. You see, when we create a true connection between observer and observer, we have a really strong connection between two people. But we have to be able to go through all the things that we're feeling and thinking and make sure that all these are in line. And if we're having negative experiences, then it's really hard to have clear communication, true connection with others and ourselves. Because like I said earlier, we can't feel connected with who we are. Then it's very hard to connect with other people and who they are. If we have good connection with who we are, do we necessarily connect with the other person? Well, the other person might not be fully connected, but we're more likely to understand them. We're more likely to be compassionate. We're more likely to be loving. We're more likely to be caring and empathetic towards others. Our internal world can be disturbed. We can start to experience things that we don't really want to experience. But we also find the key that whatever it is that's making us feel bad, we can flip it on its head and actually help ourselves feel good. And this is where I really get excited. This is the part which I really want to share. But I always pick up the little bit of negativity to get into that, because these are the things that get to us. Being happy and jolly and playful, we don't really feel the need to change anything. We don't feel the need to analyze how we feel the world. There's no need for that. Like, we are completely connected with the observer, with who we are. We're deeply connected with other people. We're having fun. We're connected. It is when we cross on the other side, when things affect us, when things disturb us, that's when we begin to think, what's going on? We don't question, we don't think when we're happy. We don't say, oh, I'm happy again. We're actually really happy to be happy. But yet again, we find ourselves being sidetracked into different feelings and emotions. I want to get back to feeling good. So how do we use the same model to improve our internal experience? We have to use again our five senses. So whether it's watching something fun, or putting some soothing music, or having some pleasant touch, whether on ourselves or, petting our dog or whatever. Something that can soothe, something that can be encouraging, a loving internal voice, something that can support us. The way we talk to ourselves, when we're angry, we have an angry tone. When we're loving and caring, we have a different tone. And we can share that tone with ourselves. We can speak to ourselves in a different way. Having happy and hopeful internal images that things will work out, being optimistic about life, even if it's momentarily, it can shift the way we think, it can shift the way we look at the world. Finding internal belief within us about problems that we're facing in life, outside problems, we calm down, we bring down the volume. We bring down the volume of what's happening outside of us. We bring down the volume of what's happening within. We're just toning it down a little bit. And when we tone it down, although we might think, oh, now life is boring, actually, we can find peace. We can find stillness. We can find tranquility. And from that point of tranquility, of peace, we're really in touch and in contact with ourselves. We can observe the world, we can experience the world fully, and we can have a more positive experience. To summarize what we talked about until now, the reason we suffer is because we are off tune. We suffer because we experienced too many negative experiences that we internalize. We don't suffer when we're happy, when we live in joy, in love. Yet we're using the same system to experience both. When we change the quality of our thoughts and emotions, we change how we experience the world, and as a result, the quality of our life. Because what is our life other than a collection of internal experiences and representations? Whether those are the information that's coming into the internal world, recollection, a storing of memories, or whatever that is. Outside conditions might follow, but it's not always necessary that they will follow. When we change the quality of our thoughts and emotions, things outside of us might begin to change. A lot of that depends on our own actions as well. But when we act from a place that we're feeling good about ourselves and the world, we're much more capable, we're much more able of making changes. We just sit there and wait for the world to change and make happy thoughts. That might not necessarily happen. But why is this concept important? Because if we learn to control our internal experience, the quality of our life can improve drastically. Our world becomes a brighter one, a lighter one, our internal one again. Our relationships improve. We're in a healthier frame of mind. Our lens that I talked about earlier in the model, the filter, gets adjusted. We create a more pleasant experience. Both the things that are coming in, the world around us, what we notice, the things that we see within us and outside of us. Is it more realistic? Is it more objective than the previous experience? Like I said, no one can negate our internal experience. But is it better? Maybe. Are we self-deluded? Maybe. But what do you prefer? Do you prefer a pleasant life, where your experiences are lighter, brighter? Or do you prefer a bitter, unpleasant, full of suffering life? I would say, comparing the two, just the new experience can be a healthier one. What do you choose to see in the world more of? Our objective world has both the good and the bad. Our internal world has both the good and the bad. What do you want to see more of within you and outside of you? In conclusion, now that we've understood the whole concept of the model of how we experience the world, the key is to build internal and external awareness. What is going on outside of us? What is going on within us? And how do we communicate with the world, between ourselves and the world and other people? How do things take place? Mindfulness is something that can teach us to be an observer. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think might benefit. Until next time, let peace guide your life, love guide your heart, and reason guide your thoughts.